What's up guys, today we're going to be speedrunning 20 new IEMs, and starting with the THIEAUDIO Valhalla. This is a quote-unquote endgame all-rounder IEM, very detailed, very good resolution, a lot of micro details, great imaging, you know, what you expect for $2,000, the layering, the separation, it is all there. The Valhalla is a better version of the U12Ts to me. It's not scooped when it comes to the vocals. The mids aren't like a little bit recessed or not hollowed out in the final extension for the vocals. The sub bass is also going to be a little bit more rumblier than the U12Ts, and you don't get that same like sharp peakiness, like sudden peak from the U12Ts, because it is just like more smooth overall and decent amount of air as well. And versus the Condensa 12, it's less treble heavy, it's a little bit, you know, bassier, it's not as neutral and bright leaning as the Condensa 12. The Cat 12 is just a lot more like airy, I would say. It is slightly more detailed than the Valhalla, but at this point we're talking about like a few percentage points, so not a huge deal. It's just a tuning preference. If you want something a little bit leaner, a little bit brighter, more I guess like sparklier, you can go for the Cat 12s. But if you want something just like better all-rounder with better bass, then the Valhalla would be very good. Now value wise, it's not going to be 2 times better than the Monarch Mark 3s or Monarch Mark 2s. It is like noticeably a little bit better, but you know, in terms of diminishing returns, I would say like 10% better than the Monarchs. For those chasing like the very best of the best, this would be worthwhile like listen. But for most people, I think you guys would be fine with just sticking with the Monarchs, the LTDs, the Crimson. Those are more than enough for most people who just want a quote-unquote endgame IEM. I'm gonna put this in top tier. I wouldn't say it is a value pick, but it is a top tier when it comes to the tuning, the sound refinement, and just quote-unquote an endgame IEM. And speaking of endgames, next we got the ELYSIAN Apostle. This is also very good, I would say, for vocals. If you want a clean, neutral, very clear vocal listing, you know, kind of experience. It kind of reminds me of the Diva, but without the sparkliness when it comes to the vocals. It's also not as, you know, all-rounded and bassy as something like the Monarch Mark 3s. It's just a very clean, neutral, and vocal-centric set. If that is your thing, you could give these a shot. I wouldn't say it's better than the RS5 or the ARCANIS or the Mystic 8. It is more like a side grade. The Apostle reminds me of a cleaner version of the Volume S, well, at least the unit that I've heard. It's a little bit more detailed, cleaner in the separation, not as warm and like husky in the vocals. I wouldn't say it specializes in male or female vocals, but if you want a all-rounder vocal set, this is an option. I wouldn't really recommend it because it is $1,700. At that price, I think you just get the Monarch Mark 2s. Pretty much does the same thing. But price aside, this is a good clean vocal set. I just don't know if it's worth $1,700. Like, I would give it a rec if it was like around $1,000. But at $1,700, this is a bit expensive. Next, we got the MOONDROP Illustrious, and this is basically just the Software's Twilight, but more expensive. I don't know what MOONDROP is doing at this point, but they sound very similar. Main difference is that the Twilight has a little bit more like sub-bass, rumble, bit extension when it comes to the low end. So you can argue that the Twilight is actually better than the Illustrious for cheaper, because you can actually get the Twilight for around like $550 on sale. So value-wise, Twilight is just like miles better. And in terms of like the overall sound, what made the Twilight special was that extra bit of low end to add that little bit of warmth to what would have been very neutral and boring, which is what the Illustrious basically is. For $900, I wouldn't really recommend this. I'll give this a maybe because the Twilight does exist at like a lot cheaper. It is arguably better to me for vocals and just in general. But if you're looking for a neutral set, you could. This is an option, it's out there. Then moving on, we got the SYMPHONIUM Giant, and this is a bassier version of the Meteor. So basically, if you guys heard the Meteors, it's basically the Meteors but without the treble and a little bit even more bass than the Meteors. So this is borderline bass headset. You know what? I'm gonna say this is a bass headset if you crank it up enough. It does need some power, like source wise. I don't think you can just like drive this off your phone. It's gonna be very hard to do so. At mid to lower volumes, I don't really recommend it because it does sound a bit too like bassy, a bit too warm. This is like on the edge of being too warm, but if you give it enough scaling, it does come off as like just warm enough. Like you're reaching the edges of being like warmness, but without being like congested and husky. And that's what the Giant is. If you want a very warm IEM, like very mid-bass centric, this would be like the set for you. Personally, I would give this a maybe. I think it just has too much mid-bass for me personally, but if you like that warm, thick like body kind of sound, very relaxing in the vocals and treble. You can crank these up like pretty high. Give these a shot, demo them first. The fit on the Symphonium IEMs are a bit weird to some people, so just definitely go give those a demo before you buy them. But moving on, we got the LETSHUOER DX1. You guys have been asking for this. This I do recommend. It is very unique in the vocals. It does need some scaling, but it scales decently well. It is very dynamic when it comes to like the vocal contrast. The vocals are decently forward. You get a good amount of contrast in the treble, the upper mids, and the low end. It's pretty full, but it's not fully bassy or warm. It's well balanced, but very contrasty and dynamic when it comes to vocals. I don't know how much these are. I don't know the price yet, but if it is under 200, I would definitely recommend these. These are probably, I would say, my favorite vocal set under 200 because they are very unique. Then moving on, we got the JUZEAR ZEOS DEFIANT. And I got mixed feelings about this because QC wise, I had 2 units. My first unit has pretty bad, channel imbalance. So QC wise, not that great. It is JUZEAR, it is Tri-Fi. And second, it's just an all-rounder. It's another all-rounder at around $100. Like if you're looking for another all-rounder, I would say, you could give these a shot. The cable is decently nice. The case is pretty nice as well. But if we're talking about like if it does anything unique, I would say no, not really. These are basically a less bassy version of the EW300 3.5 DSP. The vocals, the mids pop out a little bit more. It is a little bit cleaner, but still having like enough low end. It can be a little bit shouty to some people depending on your ear anatomy, HRTF, but overall it's just another all-rounder. I don't know what else to say. You do have a lot of options at this price point, so I would like shop around for around 100. It's not the best value, it's not the worst value, it kind of just exists. It's just not very unique in my opinion, especially with the QC issues. I think maybe would be a good spot for these. And speaking of ZEOS, this is the RINKO, and this is a pass for me. This is just too V-shaped, a little bit too bright, a little bit too sharp. The vocals are unnatural. It's like sharp but also too warm, a little bit too congested at the same time. It's just a little bit too V-shaped for me personally. If you really like a V-shaped kind of set, I guess you could go for these, but for the price, like $100, I think they are overpriced, and the tuning is just a little bit like too in your face. Personally, I would get the KZ EDC Pros if you want a V-shape. It's like what, $5, $10, right? 10 times cheaper than the RINKO and arguably smoother and better tuned than the RINKO. So yeah, definitely not it for me. Then moving on, we got the MOONDROP Ray. This is basically just the MOONDROP May, but just like less V-shape, like less bass, less treble. It's more neutral. It sounds very mid to me. It's a little bit overpriced at $100. Like if you're looking for a balanced all-rounder sound, even a neutral sound, there's just so much options under $100. You got the SYMPHONIUM EW300, you got the EA500LM, right? You got like the Zenith, you got the confined stuff, you got pretty much all the 10 hi-fis, like single DDs are like Harman, right? So there are just a lot of options. Even the Defiant, I would probably take the Defiant over these as of like a all-rounder kind of sound. I guess you can use the EQ setting, but at that point you can just pretty much EQ anything. So I don't know if that's a fair comparison. For me, this is a pass. It's a bit like just too mid for the price. Moving on, we got the KIWIEARS ASTRAL. This is going to the top of the rec tier. This is very good all-rounder under $300. The value is there, very technical, very well balanced, very vibrant. You get enough engagement, but it's not boring, but it's also all-rounded at the same time. If you're looking for a set that you can just hit shuffle on your library and just sounds good with pretty much everything, this would be the set, and I do recommend these. Then after that, we got the ZIIGAAT ARCANIS. This to me personally is going up the top tier for vocals. I like the vocals more than the Apostle on the ARCANIS. It sounds more unique. It has the bite. It's a little bit more like musical, a little bit warmer, a little bit fuller. Not warmer, but it is fuller. It's less like clinical and clean like the Apostle. It's also like 4 times cheaper, so value wise that also helps. And just in general, in terms of musicality and how unique it is for a vocal experience, I would take these over the Apostles, and because of that, I'm gonna put it on top tier for me personally. But for most people, this would probably just be in the rec tier. Then after the ARCANIS, we got its younger brother, the LUSH. This is going to the rec tier. Very good, relaxing, scaling, smooth, a little bit warm kind of sound as a just like a balanced all-rounder sound at higher volumes. These are very enjoyable, very comfy listen, very relaxing at mid volume if you want something just like doesn't hurt your ear, very just like smooth. It scales very great, basically a cleaner and more technical version of the Explorer. And if you're looking for just immersion, these would be the set for you. Then after that, we got the KIWIEARS AETHER. This is a clean, balanced, slightly airy kind of sound. This is basically a cheaper version of the 405+2 with less treble emphasis. It doesn't have the same kind of like sharpness in the treble as the 5+2. This is smoother, a little bit airier, but still giving you that like clean, balanced sound. It is like what, $50-$60 less, especially on sale. Value wise, does the same thing, but just much cheaper. Then after that, we got its younger brother, the AIROSO. This is kind of like a warmer sound, a slightly more detailed version of the EM6L for a little bit more. So in terms of value, I would say these are decent. If you want a warmer, like all-rounder kind of sound, good treble extension, it's just a great warm all-rounder, these would be a good pick. And similar to the AETHER, I would put both of these in the rec tier. Next, we got the YANYIN Cannon Pro, and these are slowly growing on me, especially with the clarion tips, which boost the treble a little bit more. It turns it into a little bit more sparklier, slightly brighter kind of sound, less clean, less neutral. And with the clarion tips, I do recommend these. I think they are very good in terms of just performance. You get a lot of variety in the tuning with the switches, and overall I would say it is pretty smooth, but you get that kind of like bright, slightly sharp, sparkly sound in the treble with the clarion tips, and gives that little bit extra bit of color that is much needed in my opinion. So with the clarion tips, which is what I'm using it with, I'm gonna give this a rec. Next, we got the TANCHJIM 0 ULTIMA 3.5/DSP. This is going to the rec tier. Very good value, very smooth treble for the price. A lot of variety, especially with the EQ settings. And even without it, just stock wise, it's just very well tuned. Good all-rounder. You can't really go wrong with these. Very solid option. Then after that, we got its older brother, the Bunny DSP. This is basically very similar in the sound, but just slightly smoother in the treble. So this still goes into the rec category. You pay probably $5 more for a detachable cable, a slightly smoother treble. I think it is worth it. It's, again, very good value, similar to the 0 ULTIMA. And yeah, this is easy rec. Similarly, the TANGZU WANER 2 also gets a easy rec. Very good all-rounder set. It's not really unique or anything like that. It's not as smooth in the treble as the 0 ULTIMAs, the TANCHJIM stuff, but at around 15 to 20 bucks, it's very good value still, right? The cable is better, the tips, the accessories you get is much better than what you get for other IEMs at around this price. And the overall sound is still, well balanced. It's not gonna wow you, it's not unique, but it's also not going to make you go like, or like, turn you off sound wise. Just a very safe starter set, and I would rec the WANER 2s. And after that, we got another budget set, the Andy Planet. If you want something just bassier, something a little bit warmer, less all-rounded, thumpier in the low end, these are pretty solid for like 15 bucks. The build quality is not very good, but it is $15. At that price, I would rec it if you want a warm, bassy listen. These are just a pretty fun listen. You're not gonna expect it to be like super clean, detailed, or anything like that. But for hip hop, for like R&B, rap, these are a solid option. Then moving on, we got the TRUTHIER CRINACLE 0 Bluetooths. This is a bit of a mixed bag because in the stock configuration without the impedance adapter, this is a bit too bright to me personally. The upper mids and the treble peak gets a little bit too much combined with the scoop. It is good sub bass, like the subwoofery kind of feeling is there, but without the ohm adapter, I'm gonna say this is like a maybe to even a pass depending on your library. With the ohm adapter, this turns into a very fun, like slightly V-shaped kind of bass head sound. Very just good for hip hop, R&B, rap. You can't really scale these too much, but this is a mini punch in my opinion with the ohm adapter. So because of that, with the ohm adapter, I'm gonna give it a rec. But if you listen to a stock, I'm gonna say a maybe to a pass. Then lastly, we got the CRINEARS Meta, which you cannot get anymore, but these are a pretty solid set. What probably my favorite Crin collab so far. I'm gonna give these a rec if you can find it for around the same price still. I know that's like pretty hard to do, but if you can do that, this is pretty solid. It's basically a more treble focused version of the Astral. It's less all-rounded. It's not as bassy, it's not as thumpy as the Astrals. The vocals aren't as forward, it's in the mids as well, but this does highlight the treble a little bit more. It gives it a little bit more sparkliness to the sound versus the Astral, which is more all-rounded. So overall, I would still give these a rec if you can find them for a realistic and okay price. But yeah, I hope this speed run was helpful. My throat again is dead. Look forward to the Septet review that's gonna come out next week probably. And yeah, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see everyone in the next one. Shout out to Dom Q, Rorix Cat, Mystic Spoon Attack, B Urac, Discall Scaldus, Walker Standard, Patrick, User, Mr. Gorillas, Paulie J, Anton Risto, Giseng Christopher Jackson, Name, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, Obi, Wizard, Frickalicious, Tapis R, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Trent Bakley, Forever New, Chuckle Norris 420, FKSRG, Treble Wall Extended, 777ZK, Cousin Fat, Oh Really, Georgios, Anthony, Julius Phillip, Dead Riddle, Belha, and Zane. Thank you guys so much.